In the summer of 1816, snow fell in New England in June, frost killed crops in July, and across the world people starved under a sun that seemed to have dimmed, and almost no one knew why. They called it the year without a summer. Some called it 1800 and froze to death. And the cause of it all lay on the other side of the planet, in a mountain almost none of them had ever heard of. The mountain was Tambora, on the island of Sumbawa in what is now Indonesia. In April of 1815, Tambora erupted in what is generally regarded as the most powerful volcanic eruption in recorded human history. The explosion tore the top off the mountain, and the sound of it was reportedly heard hundreds of miles away, so distant that some who heard the booming mistook it for cannon fire and sent troops to investigate a battle that was not happening. The immediate devastation on Sumbawa and the surrounding islands was catastrophic, killing an enormous number of people through the blast, the ashfall, and the famine that followed. But Tambora's true reach was global, and it was invisible. The eruption flung an immense mass of ash and gas high into the stratosphere, far above the weather, where winds could carry it around the entire planet. The most important part was not the ash but the sulfur, which formed a fine haze of tiny droplets in the upper atmosphere. That haze did something simple and terrible: it reflected a portion of the sun's light back into space before it could reach the ground. The whole Earth cooled. Not by a huge amount in absolute terms, but enough. Enough to shift the timing of frosts. Enough to break growing seasons that societies depended on for survival. And the following year, 1816, the bill came due. In New England and eastern Canada, the spring of 1816 gave way to a summer that would not behave. There were warm spells, and then, without warning, killing frosts would sweep back in. Snow fell in June in places that should have been green. Crops were planted, killed, replanted, and killed again. Farmers watched corn blacken in fields in the middle of what should have been high summer. In Europe, still exhausted and disordered after decades of war, the cold and relentless rain destroyed harvest after harvest. Food prices soared. In parts of Europe, the failure of the crops produced what many historians consider the last great subsistence food crisis of the Western world, real famine, with people reduced to eating whatever they could find, and bread riots breaking out in the hungry cities. Disease followed hunger, as it always does. The disordered years around this time saw deadly outbreaks spread along the roads walked by the desperate and the displaced. And here is the strange, haunting part, the turn in the story. The people living through it had no idea why. There was no way, in 1816, for a farmer in Vermont or a baker in France to know that a mountain in the Indonesian archipelago had, the year before, reached across the entire world to freeze their fields. They experienced the disaster as a mystery. Some blamed sunspots, which had been observed and discussed. Some saw the hand of God, or an omen, or the end of days. The connection between the eruption and the ruined summer would only be understood clearly much later, as science slowly assembled the picture of how volcanoes can change the climate of the whole planet. They suffered a global catastrophe without ever being able to name its cause. Not everything the year without a summer produced was ruin. That cold, gloomy, storm-racked summer of 1816 found a small group of writers sheltering indoors beside a lake in Switzerland, kept inside by the endless grey weather. To pass the dark days, they challenged one another to write frightening stories. Out of that cold summer came one of the most famous horror novels ever written, a tale of a creature assembled and brought to life by a young scientist, born, in part, from a summer when the sky itself seemed against them. There is a theory, too, that the strange, lurid skies of these ash-laden years, the vivid, glowing sunsets that sulfur haze can produce, found their way into the paintings of the era, the heavens rendered in colors no one could quite explain. Beauty and horror born from the same invisible cloud. The haze thinned. Within a couple of years the atmosphere cleared, the sun returned to its full strength, and the season steadied. The world moved on, and most of the people who had starved and shivered never learned what had done it to them. But Tambora left a lesson written into the ice and the tree rings, waiting to be read, that the Earth is a single connected system, and that a mountain no one is watching can reach across an ocean and take the summer away. Which leaves the uneasy question the eruption still poses today, to a civilization far larger and far more dependent on stable harvests than the one that barely survived 1816, it has happened before, without warning and without anyone understanding it in time. What happens to us when it happens again?